coaches. Today, before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, CoachPad. No matter if you draw scout cards by hand or use a program on your computer, the CoachPad will give you back time by never stuffing a binder again before heading out to practice. First 13.3-inch electronic device allowing coaches to clearly display scout cards outdoors in the sun has been a game changer for programs this past fall and those currently planning all across the country. This new technology allows coaches to coach and not the monotonous task of stuffing and dealing with binders on the practice field. Check out the CoachPad and CoachPad Mini on thecoachpad.com. Please make sure you check out our sponsors, our affiliates. And here is another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. And welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have a fantastic guest. He's the head strength and conditioning coach at Florida Atlantic University, Joey Guarascio. Coach, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
No problem, Coach. I'd like to say I've been able to follow you. Kind of listen to. I first saw you when I think you did a podcast with Tony Holler. I think it was the first time that I started following you. And I've seen a bunch of your stuff. Listened to you on a bunch of other podcasts. But before we get into any of that, how'd you end up as the head strength conditioning coach at Florida Atlantic?
Yeah, just like any strength coach, I was like that average or below average athletic kid that really liked training. I remember when I was like 13, 14, I asked my mom, I was like, hey, I want to take weightlifting serious. Can you get me a book? She got me Tudor Bompa's periodization book, which was like probably about 10 years advanced for me. High school, I ended up playing linebacker. I had a few scholarships, went to junior college. So I had to get my grades right. And I met Dos Remedios, who was a strength coach at the time at College of the Canyons. He's written a few books. He's an author for Men's Health. And I realized, I was like, you could do this for a profession where you train people and you could be part of football. And immediately that's what I wanted to do. And I didn't know how to do it yet. I was in junior college. I still wanted to play football. I still wanted to chase that. I ended up getting to the University of Sioux Falls, and I was extremely lucky and blessed to have two guys that were a year ahead of me that had the same dream and goals that I did, Dom Sadinsky and Chad Traver. Chad was 2 years older than me. He had already GA'd somewhere. He was at ULM at the time as a graduate assistant, and Dom had just got done with an internship in Notre Dame football. And they kind of just laid out what it was going to take, what the path looks like to get to an assistant job. I played 2 years there, won a national championship with those guys, learned what winning ball was about. I had my first year was Kalen DeBoer, who's now the head football coach at University of Washington, was our head coach. And they just instilled pride. They instilled that culture. And I was on a very successful College of the Canyons junior college team, but it just felt different, later in my career, when we won the Sugar Bowl, we won 10-3 at Ole Miss. It's like I saw the reoccurring things that I saw when we won a national championship, and it just kind of hit home. Like, winning has a recipe. I don't care what level it is, right? Winning has a specific recipe. It has a specific feeling to it. Kids care more, right? There's more accountability within the team. It's not coach-driven, it's player-driven. I still remember when, not one of my shining moments, I was late to a meeting, and it wasn't a coach knocking on my door calling me. It was Dom. It was Dom knocking on my door, and he drove me to the facility, made sure I got there. And then for an entire week, the linebackers made me carry their pads in, and we were on the far side of the field. So, little things like that just, again, that were player-driven, that just really kind of made me see what it takes to win. And those guys made a huge impression on me, not just as a football player, but as a person. Because servant leader was something that was a major aspect of our program. We were there for each other. We were there to help the community. We were there for each other. And that's something that stuck with me. And, from there, I went and did an internship at Velocity my junior year under Derek Touche. Got to train some NFL guys that summer, went back, played my senior year. And then I did an internship actually at Florida Atlantic. And, I was studying for the CSCS just like every young coach was. I was trying to get that done. Applied to about 60 jobs in the summertime. Nothing was hidden. I was just crickets everywhere. And then all of a sudden I go and pass my test. And I reapplied, and I had like 10 phone calls. So I was like, all right, I guess having those 4 letters makes you a better coach, you know. And but I ended up going to and applying, and I got a job at Northwestern State under Joe Long, who was a former Tommy Moffitt assistant, an LSU guy. And you know, again, Dom had just got done with his internship at LSU, and he was at Tulsa as a graduate assistant. And what he told me was flat out was, get to LSU. I don't care how you get there. I don't care how you get connected. Get to LSU. Because if Coach Moffitt likes you, he signs off on you. He is the godfather of strength and conditioning. Okay, and he's like, he will make sure you get a job, but you got to work for him. He ain't gonna give you nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and so I made sure I found, you know, I had to take the GRE. I found out on Monday I had to take the GRE. The next GRE was Tuesday. I took it. I got 2 points higher than what I was supposed to get into my master's courses. We were in the car. On Thursday, me and my fiance at the time, who's now my wife of 10 years. And we got up there probably Friday around like 9 o'clock. And we pull in. First thing I had to do was serve the team dinner. They were just getting into camp. And so we served the team dinner. And then I went upstairs to Joe Long's office. He's like, all right, you have 6 sports and they get here next Tuesday, start planning. And I was like, all right. So, you know, going off an internship to having 6 sports and assistant football, you know, I had to learn on the fly. I was thrown into the fire. And it's one of the things I'm most grateful in my career, because practical experience is usually the best. And I failed a lot. My first year, there was a lot of ups and downs, and I'm very thankful for it, because it helped me with the organizational side. It helped me with the communication process between a strength coach and other coaches and players and athletes. And, you know, I think it really expedited my career. I think it took me from having a year of experience to having almost 5 in 1 year, you know, and it changed me. So I ended up finishing my course for my graduate assistantship in about 10 months. And I wanted to get to LSU. I already had been down there a bunch of times observing. I met Coach Moffitt a bunch of times. I told Coach Moffitt, I said, Coach, I want to work for you. He goes, why don't I have any open spots? I said, Coach, I work for free. So I signed on to an internship. I got done in May, drove my butt down there May 2nd. I was there about a week, and I got a phone call from the AD at Northwestern State. And he says, hey, Joe Long just resigned. Are you interested in interviewing for the head job? And I said, absolutely. And, you know, I knew that the Olympic sport coaches really liked me, and they put my name in it, and they were pushing hard for me. I know Coach Pivito, who was a head football coach at the time, liked me, but I didn't know how much, you know.
Yeah.
And I got a phone call from Coach P, and he's like, I'm pushing for you, so be ready. Make sure you go kill this interview. So about 2 weeks later, I was the last one to interview. I went down there. I interviewed on a Friday. I went back down to Baton Rouge on a Saturday. We were gearing up because our first day was actually that Monday. You know, didn't hear nothing Saturday. I'm like, I don't know if I got it. You know, come Sunday, I think it was like 6 o'clock. I'm in Baton Rouge. It's about a 2.5 hour drive. 6 o'clock, I get a phone call from the AD. Hey, we want to bring you on. This is your salary. What do you think? I said, Coach, or I said, excuse me, I'm working for free, so it sounds fantastic. So, you know,
yeah.
I called Coach Mava. I said, Coach Mava, I just got the head job at Northwestern State. He said, get your ass up there. And I was gone. We started that Monday. So I get up there probably right around 10 o'clock. I call the 2 new GAs who I had never met that Coach Long hired. And I tell them, get your butts up here. We're up till about 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning, just in servicing, going over it, because I already had the plan written. I was like, if I get it, I need to be able to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
About 3 o'clock, we get done doing in service and talking about setup for the next day. I took about an hour and a half nap. 6 o'clock was the first run, and we were rolling. You know, I got married 10 days later, which was also fun. So it was a big year. It was a big year for me, you know. And again, you know, running an entire department, running 3-4 GAs, you know, learning the aspect of the organization side, the organizational and the management side of it was key. Again, I failed a ton. You know, I did a terrible job with my assistants. You know, I didn't do enough continuing education with them. I failed them on in service. You know, and I was very young at the time, and that's not an excuse. You know, but you know, it was something that I always wrote down, and I said, when the opportunity comes again, I'm not going to fail in that respect. I'm not going to. I'm going to make sure that my staff camaraderie, the harmony of my staff, the continued education of my staff, that I'm pushing guys for other jobs, that I'm elevating my staff, I'm empowering them. You know, so I was there for 2.5 years, and then I got a call. I actually interviewed with Paul Jackson about 1.5 years to my being a head strength coach at Northwestern State. I interviewed with Paul Jackson, Ole Miss, in person. I thought it went extremely well, and then I didn't hear anything. you think you do something really well, you didn't hear anything, and then he went a different way. And we played that season. I ended up that season. Then I get a call. I think it had to be like the day after New Year's. And he says, he goes, "What's up? This is Coach Jack." I go, "Hey, what's going on, Coach Jack?" And he's just like, "You in the truck?" I go, "To where?" He goes, "To Oxford." I said, "I am now." And it was that. That was it. That was the end of it. I was, I resigned from there. I spent 4 years at Ole Miss. I got to learn from one of the best strength coaches that I've ever seen or worked for, in Paul Jackson. It was an unbelievable experience. Again, I got to work with Dom, the guy I played with, which was another great experience because he really challenged me and pushed me to be a better assistant, and he held me accountable. And that was the biggest thing. Like if something wasn't right, Dom made sure it was right, and learning from Coach Jack when it comes to speed and agility, I felt very confident at that time in coaching the weight room, right? Because I trained under Gail Hatch, and I just felt comfortable in there. But I always was uncomfortable teaching speed and agility training. Like I had to program it, what's important, the technical side. And, going there, it was like a master class because that's what he was known for. That was what he was known for. When it was either planning it, programming it, teaching it, coaching it, and I just remember it like we did in service and we did it for like 3 days. And I had probably almost 30 pages of notes. I was blown away. I was like, I'm glad I made this decision. This is one of the best decisions I've ever made. We had a great run. And then I ended up taking a job at Colorado State for a year as an associate head strength coach under Ryan Davis. Ryan ended up going to Maryland. I ended up getting the call up. And, Bobo, who was the head coach at the time, Mike Bobo, who's now at Georgia, goes, "Hey, I want you to be the interim guy." He goes, "I'm not interviewing anybody because I think you're the right guy for the job. Now make me right." I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "I'm going to give you a 3-week period." 7 days later, he gave me the job. And I was rolling, and spent a year there and then had the opportunity to stay. I was retained under Steve Adazio, which I was extremely grateful for, but Coach Taggart called me down here. And I always said, if I could ever get back to Florida, man, that's where I need to be. Just the athletes, the environment. And I've been here 3 years now. This is going into our 3rd year. And like I said, we're having a great summer. We have a great group of guys. I really enjoy our coaching staff. We have an elite coaching staff at any level, and it's been a fun ride. It's been crazy, but it's been fun.
Now you mentioned a lot there that I'm going to kind of hit on, but first thing I want to hit on is the organization and planning part, because I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, you have any given time, probably 100 football kids, just looking at football only, like you roughly 100 counting the 85 scholarship plus how many, God knows how many walk-ons it probably exceeds 100, but I'm just throwing the number out there. And then the planning part, like I said, obviously you do a little bit more than we do at the high school level. You can get a little more individualistic just because of your resources and staffing and so forth. Typically at high school, it's either the head football coach like myself doing it, or we might have one strength guy. And at the same time, I think we both kind of suffer from a similar problem. Our weather's kind of erratic. I mean, we've had two tornadoes go through our area in about the past 2 weeks, and you got hurricanes and just random rainstorms that fly everywhere that mess up your stuff. So when you're looking at organizing and planning, one, how's that process work for you? And two, how far ahead do you try to stay? And do you always, and then how many contingency plans do you kind of try to put together? Because again, your weather is kind of erratic, kind of like ours.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I do is I look at, like you said, resources. Like what, from an application standpoint, like a ground up standpoint, what can we get done? Right? If I say, hey, I want to do sled pulls, but then we only have 2 sleds and we have 115 kids out there, that's not going to happen. Yeah. So you've got to understand your resources. So that's the first thing I look at, and then I look at, okay, like you said, my thing's weather. So we run in the morning and we lift in the morning and we practice in the morning as well. So it follows suit. But the reason that is because we have to beat the afternoon storms. About 3:30 every day, we get lightning, we get thunder, and we get rain. Okay, and if I were to do afternoon, any event in the afternoon, I'm getting rained out every time. So we're very lucky that this summer, knock on wood, and hopefully it doesn't happen on Monday, but we haven't been rained out. We haven't been stormed out because of that, because we're getting our runs done roughly before about 12 o'clock. Yeah. So, navigating the weather is extremely important. I think understanding ground up resource equipment wise, I think flow of workout is underrated. I think people need to look at flow of workout. How do you set your workout up to where there's minimal downtime, not rest, but minimal downtime, like where there's setup, right? Like I don't want kids seeing us set up one drill to set up another drill. How can you set the field up in a way preemptively to where the workout could just flow from drill to drill, right? So you're more worried about instruction and coaching than you are setup. So and that goes back to personnel. How much personnel do you have? How much personnel can you utilize? What can your personnel carry out? I think that's another thing too, is you have to know your people. Okay, I wouldn't give a drill just to anybody. I got to make sure that this person can coach this drill really well. This person is more suited for this drill. This person is more suited for this. And you have to set them up for success, because I think that's extremely important. Because a lot of buying comes back to comprehension, and comprehension comes to can a coach execute and teach a drill at an extremely high level. So we want to make sure that I have my people set up in the right areas. I got them with the right groups. There's some of my assistants that do really well with our big guys, and there's some of my assistants that do really well with our linebackers. And if I flop it, not they do a bad job, but it just seems to be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so, to me, you got to know your personnel. You got to set them up for success. And then as far as how far out, I like to go in 4-week blocks. Right now we're doing 3-week blocks just because we're at 3 weeks, 2 weeks off week, and then 3 weeks to finish the summer. But what I'll do is I'll plan 3 weeks, because I have the whole plan penciled in my head, right? And there's a rough sketch that I have for the entire summer. But I have 3 weeks that is cemented in. And then what I want to do is we do a really good job here of auditing our own program as we go, right? We have a lot of resources. We have VBT, we have timing gates, we have GPS, we have all these things. And I have a full-time sports scientist on my staff. And what we do is every 3 weeks, we see where we're at. And I don't want to just say, hey, yeah, we're doing great. No, what I want to do is I want to say, okay, hey, we're lacking here. This position group, it seems to be lacking in these areas, right? Or they're trending down in this specific ability. And I want to make sure that, because people think we have all this time to train. I got 8 weeks in the summer. Okay, I've only had 17 weeks uninterrupted the entire off season, right? So it's not a ton of time to train. Like people think you have, you got 30 weeks to train for the season. You don't. You don't. That's a fallacy, right? Because you got spring ball, you got voluntary periods where you can't mandate things. You got a whole bunch of things going on. Okay, you got holidays, all these different things. So for me, it's like I don't want to waste time, and I want to be proactive versus reactive. So as soon as I get word from my sports scientist, his name's Chad Herring, and he does a fantastic job for us. As soon as I get word, hey, we do debriefs at the end of every Friday, and we look at how we're trending. If it was a high volume week, we're trending a little bit down in our jumps and our sprints, that's expected, right? Like, okay, yeah, we get that. But if it's something where it's significant, we're going to make changes. I'm not one of those guys where I write it on paper and it's in stone. It is what it is. No, like we're going to be adaptive, okay? Because everyone doesn't respond to training the same way, right? And again, I want to maximize my time. That's the biggest thing. I want to maximize my time. I want to make sure that we're getting the best product that we can and the best training for these guys, because I have minimum time. So I'll go 3 weeks. I'll reevaluate. I'll have my 3 weeks that I wrote down, and it might change. It might change a little bit. It might change significantly, and I'll move forward that way. And then once we get in season, it's week to week. It's week to week because of travel, because of stress, because of finals, because of whatever it might be. But in the off season, about 4 weeks to 3 weeks is what I'm looking at is how I'm evaluating.
Okay. Now, next thing as you're planning, because I'm curious, like I said, I don't pretend to have a master's or anything in sport exercise science. I'm going off of 11 years of experience as a football coach and playing high school football. And then listening to other people and trial and error and stuff and doing research. But when you're at least from my audience perspective, how do I want to word this? My introduction to you, like I said, is Tony Holler and the stuff he's shared, what you've done, and then following you on Twitter, and then all the stuff that you've shown there, speed development. When you're planning out your speed development, how do you focus on, okay, it's a speed day here. These are the lifts I'm going to pair with it today. This is a conditioning or a support day. This is what I'm going to pair with it today. How do you go about that process? What would you suggest, particularly to high school coaches who maybe have limited resources or are trying to find that balance, because I think the philosophy of high school strength conditioning is changing massively. Like I look across the board on, especially just like Twitter, people are moving towards the feed the cats or the high speed and agility, a lot more jumping, a lot more functional movements than they were 10, 15 years ago, where it's all deadlift, heavy squat, and not much, and it's like full gassers, like all, and that's your running.
Yeah, so I think, like you said, I've seen the trend changing as well. There's a bunch of great high school strength. There's a ton of great high school strength coaches out there, and it's fun to see it changing in high school as well in college. I think what we have to understand is there's a difference between stress, of a given exercise, right? I do a calf raise, I'm sore on my calf. If I go do depth jumps, my central nervous system, my elastic properties of my muscles are fatigued and for up to 72 hours. So I think it's just having a general knowledge and understanding of how the body responds to training and how you classify, more of that Charlie Francis high-low model of what is going to drain the athlete from a neural standpoint, meaning significance and intense, right? Because if it's intense, it's going to take some time to recover from, and you can't do a ton of them. Kind of like the feed the cats model, right? Like if you're going to sprint, you don't need to do a ton of them, and then you need to recover from them. Like I just listened to that podcast with Tony Holler this morning, actually. And, he hit on rest. Well, people will have to understand, and I think you're starting to see the shift is you don't get stronger actually lifting the weights at that given time. You get stronger from recovering from that training over a given time period. And there's guidelines for these recovery rates, right? We have all these different systems in our body, and they all react to training differently. And they all have different recovery curves, okay? And what we have to do is we have to understand those recovery curves, and there has to be compatibility in your week. And that's something that Bruce Schexnayder, who really hit that home for me about in 2015, I saw him talking in North Carolina at a clinic. And he said, your week has to have a certain flow to it where it feeds the week. Mm-hmm. Day after day, it's feeding the next day, right? So I wouldn't go out there, do a ton of high-intensity sprints, come in the weight room, pair it with some explosive lifting and maybe some heavy lifting, and do the same thing the next day, because that's going to put a kid in a hole that he can't come out of from a recovery standpoint. I look at it like this. I ask coaches all the time. I said, would you max out every day? No. So then why would you pair a hard thing day after day after day without any recovery? Okay, because that's where we're going to grow. That's where we're going to get better. Okay, that's where the adaptation actually takes hold, is in those recovery periods. So just having that general guideline of, when we do something significant from a neural standpoint, from a central nervous system standpoint, whether it's Olympic lifting, whether it's plyometrics, where it's sprinting, you're going to need 72 hours before you hit it hard again with that exercise classification. I'm going to give 72 hours. That's why our hardest days from a neural standpoint, similar to what Charlie Francis' model is, that high-low is Monday and Thursday. Okay, those are our performance days. That's what we call them. All right, and then because we allow that time in between, that doesn't mean you can't do anything between those 72 hours.
Yeah.
You just got to make sure that you're not hitting that same bucket again, because that bucket's full. All right, and so for us, when we go to the support days, I look at things, what are lower on that continuum of intensity? I'm going to get killed by the powerlifting community, but like bench press is lower on the continuum for intensity. Overhead press, a lot of the upper body stuff, auxiliary lower body stuff. Like if we do a side lunge with a kettlebell, that's lower on that level of intensity. Like that's a lower exercise. When I look at tempo runs or repeat sprint ability, even like that's lower on the side because they're not reaching high speeds. Neurally, it's not hard. Peripherally, it's hard, right? Muscular fatigue, it's going to be higher, but that goes away and they recover fast from that. Okay, but from a neural standpoint, they're not getting completely destroyed and taxed, right? You've probably seen before. You do a ton of sprints, you do a ton of jumps, and the next day the kids are lethargic and they're uncoordinated.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, these kids are, coach, they're out of shape, this and that. But we don't understand that they're just very, very fatigued. Their muscles might not be fatigued, right? Their quads and hamstrings, they might not be fatigued. But from a neural standpoint, that signal going to the muscle, getting into fire, those muscles communicating together, that's what's interrupted. That's what's slowed down that day. All right. And that's what we got to understand is when that happens over and over and over again, the impact is high. And that's where you see your immunity drop and kids get sick, or you see catastrophic injuries like Achilles or, hamstring issues or all these other things, right? Because then we also got to understand, when you do something that's extremely technical, you want them to be fresh because you want the movement, okay, to fit in a certain bandwidth that's safe and produces a good output. Okay. If they're fatigued, it's going to be sloppy. If it's sloppy, there's a higher chance for injury. Okay. Compensation patterns, all those different things that go into that. So we have to understand biological process. Not that you have to have a master's degree in it or anything like that, but you got to understand, okay, we do a certain threshold of sprinting in a day. They're going to need a few days to recover from that before I go ahead and hit them with more sprints. All right. If we do a ton of Olympic lifts on a Monday, I got to know, all right, they're going to be a little bit messed up on Tuesday. I might not want to do sprints and things that are very ballistic and high intense on those days. So it's just that balancing act of cycling between high intensity, low intensity, high intensity, low intensity. And that has to come back to coaches creating classifications and exercise menus. If you classify your exercises as, all right, this is a high stress, this is a low stress, it becomes very easy and plug and play. Because you could check yourself. And that's a lot of what we have to do is we have to check ourselves.
I mean, that's fantastic, Coach. Like I said, I got half a page of notes just off of that. The other thing I want to hit on, continuing with the lifting part, and I'm not going to pretend to know everything or pay attention to every coach, but I see you do a lot of banded and isometric related lifting. The banded, I kind of understand. The isometric, I'm not as familiar with. Just I've never been in a program that really does it. But why do you do so much of both of those? Because I see a lot of banded, I think, squats for you, a lot of isometric holds. Why is that a focus of yours? I heard you speak about it a little bit, but just for people who've not maybe heard it, why is that, especially the section you focus on in certain days?
So we put a huge premium on eccentric strength. Okay, so Chaldees and triphasic, they hit the market probably, I think, over 10 years ago now, and it erupted, right? We're going to do eccentric, isometric, concentric, and people started seeing really good results, specifically in change of direction and just any athletic movement that required a stretch reflex. Okay. And for us, what I looked at, I was like, what's our missing piece? I thought we did a fantastic job creating concentric power and rate of force development. I thought we did a great job with that, right? With our Olympic lifts, with all of our sprinting and all these things. And again, I like to challenge myself. I like to challenge my staff. I said, what are we missing? There's something we're missing. I'm telling you, there's something we're missing. And it was deceleration strength. Okay. And there's a ton of research. Damian Harper, who's in England right now. I can't tell you what university he's at in England, but I've spoken with him many times, and he's put out a ton of research on deceleration strength and the importance of it and the effect it has on not only being able to stop and change direction, but the effect it has on speed in general and robustness of athletes. So we looked at our program and we figured out there's a deficit there. We're very concentrically based, meaning everything's explosive. But where's the braking? Where's the stop? Okay, and that's a huge component of sport. You think about change of directions, any sport in general, every sport for the most part is stop and go except track. Yeah. And even track at the end of 100 meters, they have to deaccelerate. So we found that we need to train this. Well, then it's like, okay, well, how do you train? What are the aspects that go into it? So, and that's kind of where we went down a rabbit hole. We found accentuated eccentric loading, which is you've probably seen us do like the safety bar squats with the bands, with our hands off going down and then coming back up. That's accentuated eccentric loading, meaning that lowering portion of the lift is super maximal to what they would be able to actually just squat if they were just normally squatting. So overloading that eccentric action, with the isometrics, we take for granted how many times our athletes isometrically contract on the football field or whatever sport they may be in. Think about an O-lineman and a D-lineman when they first collide. There's a moment where it's paused. Those are isometric. If I'm an O-lineman, I pass set, and you come with speed to power, and I stop you, and I'm yielding, that's an isometric action. Okay, so we just looked at, okay, what are we missing? What occurs in the game? What kind of contractions are we not attacking? All right, what abilities are we missing? And what we found is we started training eccentrically, and our jumps went through the roof. and our sprint times went through the roof. Well, why? We're strengthening the rubber band on both sides. All right, now, yeah, we're more powerful concentrically, but that rubber band now, because of all that eccentric training, is now thicker and can lengthen further and snap back harder. And that was a huge thing for me because, you know, we all love strength training. I mean, I'll be the first one to put a big clean on Twitter or, you know, highlight a big. I love it, right? I'm a meathead. I'm a former Olympic lifter. I got a Gail Hatch picture sitting on my door right here in my office, right? I love it. But strength only goes so far in sport. Because you have to understand, sport is governed by time, meaning that there's a time limit to every sport movement and event. Okay. I'll use my O-lineman. We slow-mode O-lineman kick sliding. And what we found was that their average one kick slide was about anywhere between 250 milliseconds to 350 milliseconds. Okay, that is a fast action. That is not a squat. And what we have to understand is maximal strength doesn't really start to kick in until 500 milliseconds. So what's that gap? That gap is going to be, again, that plyometric training, that speed training, all those things, strengthening that stretch shortening cycle. Okay, because we're going to have to be more reliant on those processes to accomplish those movements than we are just max strength because it's too slow. Right? Me squatting 500 pounds is too slow. That it would take me, I think we found our average squat down to up maximally above 85% was anywhere between a second to a second and a half to accomplish. Okay, a second to a second and a half. All right. Majority of sports movements, what we found is when we recorded all these movements and we broke them down from a time perspective on Dartfish, was majority of sport movements happen 500 milliseconds or below. So my max strength doesn't kick in until 500 milliseconds. And I'm saying max strength is everything. Max strength is everything. Max strength is everything. I'm not able to use it. I'm not even able to tap it. Okay. Because it's too fast. The movement is too fast. The sport movement itself is too fast. So how do I turn around and create force in those brackets? And that's where that stretch shortening cycle, the ability to go from ESET, that stretch, to work more with my tendons and make my muscles work more as rubber bands versus just outright contractile force. And that's what we found. And that's what we found with our eccentric training, with our deacceleration. Like we tested our pro agility. Right? I like testing pro agility. I know some people don't like testing pro agility. It is a good change of direction measurement, right? And after 6 months of deacceleration training, eccentric emphasis, like our pro agility times dropped dramatically. I mean, it was ridiculous. Like to the point where I don't even want to tell you because people are like, all right, BS, you're bragging. Like, but like, you know, and then what I saw, and this is another thing, right? We talk about robustness of an athlete. Okay, if that rubber band is stronger, thicker, and can snap back better, okay, that means that it's more durable.
Yeah.
Okay. We had no hamstring or soft tissue injuries in spring ball. Zero. Okay, I had one contact ACL, and the kid jumped on the other kid's back and tried to put his foot in the ground. I can't stop that. Yeah. All right. But you talk about coming out of spring ball with one surgery. Okay, kids talking about, yeah, man, I feel really good coming out of my breaks. I feel really good. You know, my D linemen are talking about, yeah, I feel really good when I go speed to power or when I go ahead and try to give them a jab step. And you see it, they move better. They're more forceful. And that's what I saw was like, all right, this is a huge piece of the pie that I was missing and that we need to get in there. So again, when you see the bands and you see the isometric work, you know, those are things that I just feel like there needs to be eccentric and concentric training. There needs to be isometric work in your program. I love overcoming isometrics for intensity purposes. So you see like those mid-thigh pulls where they're trying to pull that rack out of the ground. The other day we did quarter squat, overcoming quarter squat where you're driving into the rack. And then what I really like is the yielding isometrics for the longer duration to help build up tendons and to really help with you know, everyone always talks about hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is just time on attention. Yeah. Right. So I'm able to get muscle growth by guys holding split squats or holding a push-up deep in a box or whatever it might be. I can have them hold it for 45 seconds, do 3 sets, and they're done. And it also helps with lactate buffering capacity. You know, I heard Tony talking about the acidity and talking about, you know, lactate training. Well, and you know, is fast tempoed offenses, you start getting over 6-7 plays. I don't care what anybody says, that's a lactic event. You know, and we're trying to be a no-huddle offense. You're snapping the ball every 20 seconds. That's incomplete rest. Lactate will jump on them by 6, 7 plays. They have to be ready for it. They have to be prepared for that. And that's where the isometrics also come into play, or yielding isometrics, where we're just holding a position for a certain specific amount of time.
Okay. Now, continuing on that, our dose and your dose, I mean, we have different level of athletes. I still have kids developing and they're massively developing their body and going through puberty. Your kids are still developing, but again, the puberty is not as prevalent. Our dosage is obviously going to be different just because we're different level of athlete, different type of where you are in your life. From a high school perspective, how would you recommend high school coaches approaching that the isometrics, the frequency, for people who want to make, obviously they need to do research when they go into it, but just from the outlook, what would your recommendations there be?
I would say just simplify. So with that stuff, right? So say you get your high school freshman, he's a brand new baby giraffe, right? He can barely walk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's going through puberty, probably grew 3 or 4 inches in 6 months, and he's all over the place. All right, you could take something as simple as, okay, we're going to do a zombie squat where the bar just sits over your shoulder, your hands are up, and we're going to go 5 seconds down just with the bar. Okay, you can make it as simple as you need to for the athlete, right? The younger the athlete, the simpler the progression becomes or regression becomes. Okay, I think a lot of people, they want to get fancy and prove how smart they are. I'm guilty of it. Okay, just like any other coach, I want to show everyone this fancy new exercise. Well, meanwhile, if all you did was a kettlebell deadlift with a 5-second lowering, okay, with that athlete, that probably in that specific situation checks the boxes you need. And then as the athlete progresses and you see better movement patterns, you see higher levels of strength and all those things, you just increase the progression and difficulty of the lift. And you can do that one or two ways. You can do it with a variation of that lift. So if I go from a kettlebell to a deadlift, or I could do it with load. So instead of 1 kettlebell, now you have 2.
Yeah,
I think you can keep it extremely simple and still get it done from an eccentric and isometric standpoint. The beauty about isometrics is no one's getting hurt doing isometrics. The muscles at a standstill. It's just contracting. It's not moving. Okay, so from that perspective, like you put them in. All right, we're going to do wall sits. That's a super regressed version of an isometric, a yielding isometric. Okay, we're going to start at 2 sets of 30 seconds, and then we're going to go up to 45 seconds. Now we're going to go 3 sets. Now we're going to go 20 seconds, but we're going to go 1 leg on the wall. You know, it's as long as you understand the concept of what you're trying to train, you just got to find what the simplest version is. I like, especially, and I think it's very applicable not only to younger athletes, but also return to play. When you talk about athletes returning from injury, I think that's a huge component of that as well, is you have to know, okay, this is where I want to be. This is the end game. Okay, where's the start?
Yeah.
What's the most basic regress version I look at? Find it. Okay, well, a wall sit. I do it with my guys coming off ACL. That's one of the first things we do. We do a wall sit for time. Okay, but I want to get to essentially the eccentric loaded, banded split squat. That's what I want to get to. Yeah. Well, how do I do that? And I think if you have your end game and you have where you need to start, okay, you can map that out and you can show that progression. Then you just go and progress it based off that athlete. Like I hate time limits. Like, yeah, you need to be in this phase for 3 weeks with this kid. You need to do goblet squats for 3 weeks. Well, what if he masters it after 2 workouts? Yeah. Okay, you're going to stunt his progress and not put him on a bar? Because he could probably handle the bar. Not saying you need to put 315 on the bar and have him front squat right off the bat, but you could give him the bar. If he's doing 95 pounds, that's a win.
Right.
But I think if you have the end game and the start point, I think as long as you understand the concept, it's pretty easy to go ahead and plan progressively. Because then what you're going to end up doing is you're going to create a framework. And then it's a plug and play system. Okay, I got all my freshmen coming in. Framework, here we go. Beginning. There you go. That's where you start. That's where we want to be. This is where you start. Okay, my freshman that comes in that maybe his dad was a strength coach and he's been trained, guess what? You're moving up 2 levels right off the bat. All right, you move good. You got the kid, like I said, hit puberty, grew 6 inches like I did my freshman year. Okay, you know what? You're going to stay in this level 0 for a little bit longer. You're going to stay in this ground floor a little bit longer until you just start that movement competency increases. Then we can load it. All right. And now you can load it. You can move up. And that kid might take all the way till his junior year to get to the same level where that freshman who just from a training age or from a maturity standpoint is just further along. And he might be there his sophomore year or the end of his freshman year. So I think, but if you create that framework, that's the critical piece that I think a lot of people miss, is if you create that framework, it's easy because then it's one continuum. You know where to put them. All right, that kid's really bad. Put him in the beginning. That kid's really good right off the bat. You know what? Level 2, let's roll.
Yeah.
No,
that's perfect, Coach. No, seriously. Now I got 4 questions for you. And then we're good to go. First one, because you mentioned it earlier, and it really wasn't going to be one of my questions, but it triggered and had me thinking why we've been going is you mentioned culture in the weight room earlier, while you were doing your background and so forth. How do you approach that? Obviously, there's 2 parts. There's kind of what you need to have your room be functional as a strength and conditioning coach from a culture standpoint, but then also you have your head coach's culture. And you got to mix those. Obviously, a lot of your weight room culture is going to be his culture. But how do you approach culture in your weight room, especially as you get new guys in the summer or even mid-year for your mid-year transfers or your early signees? How do you deal with the culture aspect of your weight room?
I think there has to be clear and defined standards for what you want. And what I mean by that is if I say, hey, we squat this way, this is how we squat. If we do a push-up this way, this is how we do a push-up. And I think you have to be unwavering in those standards. And I think that what you have to do is you have to get your staff to understand those standards better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. Right? I think once you create those standards, and I tell our players all the time, you're not going to win with me. I'm the most stubborn person in the building. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. My wife tells me all the time, you're too damn stubborn. I go, I know. My players tell me that every day. Okay. And once they see the benefit of it, once they see that it's for their benefit, you get buy-in. I think also a missed opportunity with a lot of coaches is enthusiasm. Listen, they don't come here to lift weights. They didn't sign to Florida Atlantic to come here and lift weights with me. They signed here to play football. But if I'm extremely enthusiastic and I create an environment which they want to be in, all right, that's challenging. I'm not saying it's hugs and kisses all over the place, but that's extremely challenging, but it's fun. From me blasting the music they like, Little Dirk shaking my windows in here, okay, and celebrating when they do something really well, and I tell my staff all the time, the energy gives, the energy you get. So if you're a statue and you're not in, like Coach Hash would say, in the eye of the storm coaching, okay, that's what you're going to get back. You're going to get that. I really don't care that much. But if you show that you care a lot and you have a ton of energy and a ton of passion for what you do, and then you know what you're doing, okay, you know what you're doing, you know the techniques that you're trying to train, you have answers to their questions, because these kids have questions nowadays. They're on Instagram and Twitter just like we are, and they see all this crazy training out there. You have answers to their questions, and then you show them progress. The coach will take care of himself. Like, I'm at the point now where I've had kids for 3 years. I can be like, all right, grab your right ear and jump on one leg. It'll make you vertical jump higher. And because they've gotten results from the first 3 years, they'll do it without a question. Like, yes, sir, I got you. Let's go. So I think you have to define those standards, and you have to be extremely clear in what you want. I always make sure before we go out to runs, my assistants have clarity in how to teach drills, and that it's the same all the way around. Because I don't want them to go out there and stumble through instructions, and then they get on a kid because the kid did it wrong, but meanwhile they taught it wrong. Yeah. Because then again, it's about, I never want the players to question that we don't know what we're doing, ever. Whether it's setup, whether it's exercise selection, whatever it may be, because that's what they're going to see. I don't want kids. I don't want disbelief. I want belief. I want to cultivate belief through that enthusiasm, through clarity, through buy-in. And that's where culture is, right? Culture's dynamic as well. Like, we all say culture and we think, yeah, we got a great culture. Well, you might have had a great culture. I'll give you an example. We had a great culture Tuesday. Wednesday, we had a bunch of kids coming to get extra work. Our culture on Thursday was terrible. Okay, we didn't have a good day. And that for that day, our culture wasn't bad, wasn't good. All right. And Friday, we responded and we had a great day. And our culture was fantastic. Guys were positive, encouraging, accountable to each other. And it's again, it comes back to being stubborn. Like, if you create those standards if you have clarity, instruction, and you have a vision for these kids, I think the culture, it's something you have to work at every day, but I think you'll have a positive culture. You'll get a culture that people want to be around. Now you got to be the example yourself. You have to be the example yourself. Right? I tell our kids, I want all y'all to work hard. And if I say that to them, and then I walk out of the building at 1:00, right, and they're all coming up here like, "Where's Coach Joey?" I mean, I'm a hypocrite. They're not going to believe me. They're not going to buy what I'm saying, But if I'm up here till 5, and I'm texting kids to come in and come get extra mobility. Hey, come talk to me. Holler at me real quick. I want to talk to you about certain goal setting or being a better leader, or I want to prod you on how the team is in the locker room. What is the actual? Because that's the real culture, is what they're doing when you're not around. How they're talking about the team, how they're talking about each other. That's the real culture, And it's diving into that and being the example. Having your staff work extremely hard and be on point with everything, and attention to detail and the sense of urgency that you want out of them as well, to be the example. And then spending time with the kids. I think that's another huge part of culture as well, right? Everyone wants a great culture where all these kids love each other and they want to work hard. And then coaches don't want to spend a lick of time with nobody. I've seen it everywhere I've been. They're like, hey, you know what? Like, yeah, I don't understand this kid's deal. Have you talked to him? Because I know what his deal is. He comes to my office every day for about 15, 20 minutes and tells me, like just talk to the kid.
Yeah.
Because you never know what anyone's going through. Everyone's on their own journey. I mean, we all have stuff going on in our lives, man. And it might just take a 10-minute conversation to figure out, hey, man, this kid really got something going on, and maybe this conversation could turn around and make this kid better in this specific situation.
Okay, Coach. Now, the next thing is, and the last two should be pretty quick, but this one, I mean, you might be able to get really detailed with as well. For just general advice for high school head coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, I think you can take this any direction you want, but just general advice to them about strength and conditioning, speed and agility, acceleration, deceleration. You can take it wherever you want, but what is some general advice for some high school coaches who are working with student athletes?
I think first thing they have to do is understand the technique of what they're trying to teach. And that's got to be the biggest thing. And listen, I'm not here to judge anybody, because I've been at that point in my career where, again, I wasn't very strong in teaching maximum velocity or acceleration, all these different things. Okay. But you have to understand what you're good at and what you're bad at. All right. And if you can't teach it, don't teach it. Don't put it into play. You can't execute it, don't put it into play. Right. Like, that's like, hey, we're going to run 4 wide, and then you have a team full of fullbacks. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, know who you are, know what you can do. Now, that doesn't mean don't seek out education, because I think in this day and age that if you don't know something and you want to know something, you can find out about it very quickly, and you can get to the source and you can learn and teach it. So I think that's the first thing, is if you're going to do something, be very good at teaching. I think simple is better in high school. Simple is better. Okay, yeah. I look at it all the time, and you get too fancy, you lose perspective on what you're really trying to do.
Yeah.
If you're trying to sprint. I'll do it all the time. I'm like, we're gonna do today for half our workout, our acceleration work. We're gonna race. We're gonna line up all our skills, our mids and our bigs on the goal line. They're gonna run 20 yards. We're gonna film it. We're gonna call out winners and losers. We're going to have fun. We're going to bet about it, all that good stuff. Not money, though, because that's NCAA violation, right? But, we're going to have fun with it, but that's something simple that gets the job done for what the theme of the workout is. And I think that's the next thing is create clarity in what you're trying to train throughout the week. Have a purpose in what you're doing. Have a purpose. If today's a speed day, make it a speed day. If today's like high school, I know you guys can do like more 7-on-7 and those things. If today's an instructional day or a 7-on-7 day, make sure it is that. Okay, make sure it's that. Have clear objectives in what you want to do day in and day out, and plan ahead. It doesn't need to be 7 months ahead, but plan ahead. Don't just show up to the facility, grab a notepad out, and write down what you want to do that day. Okay, plan ahead. And I think anyone that does that, that cares about the kids, invests in their kids, I think they'll have a successful program.
One of my last two questions is, what motivated you to start posting workouts and stuff on Twitter? I think that, because I think that's one, it's created some debate, but that's what that is what it is. But I think what it's given a lot of us is a resource, okay, for new ideas. Like, I mean, you brought up racing. Like, I thought like that. I've heard you speak about it once before, and then I've seen a lot of the racing stuff you've been doing lately, and it's kind of, oh, okay, that makes sense on why you add that to speed days. It makes 100% sense. You're going full speed. It's a motivational, like, it's competitive, fantastic. What was your kind of motivation behind adding stuff to Twitter and shooting out a lot of what you're doing on speed, conditioning days, etc.?
So it's changed. So my initial one is I was working with pro day athletes at Ole Miss. We were doing a bunch of speed stuff, and I'll be very, very candid with you. I was in the hunt for a head strength job.
Yeah.
And nowadays, and this, just like I know this, is I mean, your resume is your Twitter and your Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to put out material that people would want to see and want to look at and garner some interest from head coaches, and what ended up happening was, and what really changed it is I got hit up by a whole bunch of coaches that started a whole bunch of dialogue that has been awesome and really helped me grow as a coach as well. And when a coach hits you up and asks you why you're doing something and challenges your philosophy, it's like, a lot of people get sensitive and defensive. I think it's awesome because it's an opportunity to strengthen your own belief.
Yeah.
Or change it for the better. It starts dialogue, it starts conversation, it starts it opens up a new network where you might not have thought you can get information from, or open up opportunities for you that you might not have known that you could have. And the more I've done it, the more I've had high school coaches reach out to me and thank me and say, man, I appreciate you putting this out and doing that. And again, if I'm in that servant leadership mode, like, I look at it, my high school coaches did a hell of a job training us in high school, but they had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah.
But they did it, they believed in it, but they had no idea what they were doing. I look at it like, if they knew what they were doing, if they had resources they could have went to get better training, that would have made me a better player. And that's what it's all about. It's helping people, right? Like, I want to help people. So that's why I put that post out about high school coaches. Like, we're always open for any high school coach to come observe our workouts at any point in time. Just text me. Like, I want coaches to see how our college athletes train. And then I want them to come up with questions for me to help them in their specific situations and scenarios. So posting has just opened up a lot more dialogue. It's opened up a ton. And then it's opened up opportunities like this to talk on your podcast, and to have Tony Holler call me. And I was able to speak at TFC twice. And, I spoke at the XP clinic the other day. And it's opened up opportunities to kind of put my stuff out there, what we do, and have it be challenged and have it be reinforced, and have people, a lot of people like it. Some people don't, it's just fun. I think it's just a way to connect with people as well. Just don't put a picture of a trophy in a garbage up. I did that one time. A lot of slack for that one.
And then my last question is, because you've mentioned a couple books and a couple other things as we've kind of gone through this, and it got me thinking, especially for like high school coaches, but you can direct it towards anybody. Do you have any, okay, here's stuff I recommend you read or you look at? Like, obviously I know you write some blogs, in articles. I've read those, like you and Tony do for the track and the fat. Oh God, I can't remember what it's called right now. Thank you. But besides that, outside of your own stuff, is there any like book recommendations or other recommendations you have for people to kind of look at?
Yeah. First off, all my stuff is just regurgitated from what I read. So yeah, again, I got to give credit where credit's due. I'm a borrower from everybody. So when you read my things, you're reading from like 15 other people. So it's just it's my view of it, my lens of it, how I interpret it, right? I think for high school coaches, a great book would be Starting Strength by Mark Ripto, right? It gives very, very simplistic progressions on how to plan training, how to classify athletes. To me, it's an easy read as well. It's not overly sciencey. It breaks down a lot of things in simple ways, which I think early in my career helped me out tremendously when I was trying to understand and conceptualize how to play in training. I would say another great book is Comprehensive Strength and Conditioning by Paul Gamble. Okay, because he goes, you pick a topic, agility, speed, change of direction, plyometrics, recovery, mobility. He is just so thorough, and it's again just gives such great examples of and templates for how to process that and apply it. So that was another fantastic book. And then I think if you read and can find any Charlie Francis work, okay, any Charlie Francis work, he was decades ahead of his era. I'm talking about decades. And his stuff, like I know he has forums. I know Derek Hansen, who does a fantastic job. He worked for Coach Francis for a long time. I was actually an athlete, and he puts out a lot of great stuff now as well. But if you could find those old forums and some of those old books that he has, I mean, they're fantastic resources, just unbelievable resources, because he talks a lot about in those forums, specifically football, and how to integrate a high-low model into football, and talks about football practices and those different things. I think those right there, that would, if you hit those three, that would be an unbelievable jump start to your education process.
Okay. Well, coaches, give Coach, his Twitter will be in the bio. Please give him a follow. And you can see pretty much anything and everything else he does through there. He's got his link tree on there on his Twitter profile as well. So if there's anything specifically, which I know has a bunch of podcasts on there that he's also been on, articles he's written, stuff through TFC, interviews. There's all kinds of stuff on his link tree that I've kind of delved down into prep for today. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz. Check out the sponsor links below, all that lovely jazz. And then thank you for listening to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.